So welcome to everyone who's joining us for this webinar this morning here at ECFR. We unfortunately still can't have all of these meetings in person, but we're glad you found your way to us also virtually. I think we have reached a crucial mass among the audience so that we can start. And also we're German, so it's 11 to 12, so it should be 11 to 12. So this is when a German runs this debate, then this is what's going to happen. My name is Janka Oertel. I'm the director of the Asia program at ECFR, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the event Europe Debates with the question, should Lithuania expect more European solidarity vis-à-vis China or not? This is an Oxford-style debate, which is part of ECFR's Reshape Global Europe project. This project is generously supported by Stiftung Mercator, for which we are very, very thankful. We are in the process at the moment kind of running various of these debates. We're looking at the crucial topics that are actually shaping European conversations, that are shaping Europe's foreign policy environment, that are shaping where Europe can position itself. What we're facing is China that is ratcheting up economic pressure against a variety of countries. And it has done so in the region for quite some time, but now also in Europe, increasingly. This has happened, particularly against Lithuania, in reaction to both leaving the 17+1 format, but also the opening of what has been termed the Taiwan Representative Office in Vilnius last year. Some people say that this is a wake-up call and a moment when all EU countries should realize that they need to show solidarity with Lithuania to demonstrate that the EU as a bloc will never accept the use of economic coercion against one of its members, to show that Europe really stands for the values it says it holds so dearly: freedom, democracy, and human rights. Others argue that solidarity should go along with responsibility and that the promise of solidarity should not encourage member states to be reckless or offensive, and that the Lithuanian government overstepped the line, which is now making it complicated for all other member states and maybe to the detriment of not only the Lithuanian economy, but also other, maybe bigger goals one wants to achieve this year in reassessing and recalibrating the relationship between Europe and China. So our question is, who's right? And what are the consequences that have to be drawn? We may not be able to answer who's right, but we will at least be able to present you with the range of arguments so you can make an assessment. So it is a debate. That means you can also cast a vote on where you think you stand. For this, after the introduction, we will, a little pop-up box will open in the Zoom platform. You can use the polling function there. And we will give you a minute or two then for the initial result, and then we will go into the opening statements. I am very, very happy that for this really complex and complicated topic, which is absolutely far from trivial, we have an amazing cast today to discuss it in the spirit that is informed by the exchange of well thought through positions and that does justice to the complexity of this issue. We have with us Reinhard Bütikofer, who is not only a force of nature, but also sometimes seems as the one-person army in fighting for a better, more realistic approach to the challenges that Xi Jinping's China poses to Europe and the world. Reinhard Bütikofer is a member of the European Parliament since 2009, previously was the chairman of the Green Party in Germany, and he chairs the European Parliament delegation of relations with China. Most importantly, obviously, though, he's a council member of the ECFR. It's probably his chief position that I have to mention at this point. He will enter into the intellectual debate and exchange, or what could be termed as an intellectual fist fight, with Professor Šarūnas Liekis, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science and Diplomacy at Vytautas Magnus University in Kaunas, one of Lithuania's leading universities. Professor Liekis is a well-known commentator on current affairs in Lithuanian and international media, and has been very outspoken in the current debates around Lithuania's policies vis-à-vis China and Taiwan. He looks back at an impressive academic career with research conducted at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Brandeis University in Massachusetts, and Vilnius University. But what will maybe give him a slight strategic advantage in this conversation is the fact that he also studied at Oxford University. So this being an Oxford-style debate, he should feel right at home. Welcome to both you, Reinhard Bütikofer, Šarūnas Liekis. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And now I would ask Marlene, who is our technical host today and is supporting us in the background, to let the little polling tool pop up so that we can say, should Lithuania expect more solidarity vis-à-vis China? Do you agree? Or do you disagree? Or do you not know? as with all interesting games and things that one can play, hosts and panelists are not allowed to vote in this one, so you're not allowed to give yourself a little heads up there immediately. So we will announce the result of the pre-vote just kind of as soon as we have the results, and I'm waiting for Malene to give me a little heads up on where we stand on that, so that we can actually start with our introductory statements. We will begin with Reinhard Bütikofer arguing for the motion, saying Lithuania should expect more solidarity, and then turn over to Professor Liekis, who would argue against it. We will then have a Q&A session, for which I will already ask all of you to prepare your questions and hand it back to the speakers at the very end to let us know their kind of closing and concluding remarks, for which they will have 2 minutes, and then you will get to vote again. We have the results in. Out of our viewers, 87% agree that Lithuania should expect more solidarity vis-a-vis 85%, sorry, should expect more solidarity, European solidarity vis-a-vis China. 10% disagree and 5% don't know. So you're only battling for the 5%, or you have to be very convincing, Šarūnas, Liekis, in your remarks. So Reinhard, you're starting into this with a massive kind of advance in trust. So let's see, and we will hand it over to you for your opening remarks. The clock is ticking for 5 to 6 minutes for you.
Thank you to ECFR and to you, Janka, for putting this on and for having me. I indeed would argue that Lithuania should expect more solidarity from EU partners. To be clear, there has been a considerable amount of solidarity already. Political declarations from the parliament, from the presidents, from vice presidents. The EU has decided to take a case to the WTO to support Lithuania. And from internal sources, I know that people in the German government high on have got on the phone to encourage German investors to do the right thing in Lithuania and not fall victim to Chinese blackmail. But even with all that, it's not been enough. And I would quote 4 reasons for showing more solidarity. First, the principle of strategic solidarity between democracies, which we have to abide by in the world we live in. Even if our democratic partners make mistakes, the principle of solidarity must reign supreme. Second, China is trying to redefine Europe's one China policy. Lithuania's actions fall well within the limits of the EU's policy, and we should not allow China to try to change that from the outside. Third, the economic rationale strongly should propel us towards more solidarity, because this has turned into a central attack on the single market, which is the holy grail of the European integration project. If we don't defend the single market, what would we defend? And finally, there's the precautionary principle. Aggressive appetites of authoritarian regimes tend to grow while they're being fed. So let's signal that we will not allow China to move further down that road. So what can we do to show solidarity? Number one, bilateral relations between European countries and China should be used to emphasize the point. I'm glad to have seen that President Macron did exactly that in his telephone call with Xi Jinping. Second, there's a summit coming up on April 1st, April Fool's Day, a very funny date for that summit. Why wouldn't we make a precondition for that summit that either China moves or we will insist on turning the Leaders Summit into a 27+1 summit to give Ukraine and its partners a chance to confront the Chinese side head on. Third, we are working on the anti-coercion instrument, which has been in the planning before, but is now being sped up. And finally, and this might be the most important level of support, all European member states should enhance their own cooperation with Taiwan to demonstrate that Lithuania is not going to be alone in that regard.
Thank you so much, Reinhard. And you were able to make your case in 3.5 minutes, which is impressive. That leaves us with an extra minute for Šarūnas Liekis, which he might need actually in the defense.
Because I'm being disadvantaged, yeah. So.
Exactly.
From the very beginning.
So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we should start from the context first. The People's Republic of China was established with its capital in Beijing after the Civil War, while the institutions of the Republic of China remained isolated in the city of Taipei and in the island of Taiwan. However, the two states will still compete for international recognition as a united China. No one doubts that China is a state under international law. However, it is not clear to many people who is supposed to represent it, the Republic of China or the People's Republic of China. So when we speak about Taiwan, very often we confuse what we are speaking about. So this is introduction for that. And here we're coming for the Lithuanian case. Lithuania reestablished as a state on September 14th, 1991, established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, and not reinstituting its former relationship in interwar period with Republic of China. Perhaps they were hoping, to have swift recognition by the UN. Moreover, on behalf of the third Lithuanian government, a mutual declaration between the Republic of Lithuania and the People's Republic of China was signed. The declaration states very clearly that diplomatic relations had been established on the basis of the principle of mutual respect for sovereignty, and I stress it here, and territorial integrity. Then the declaration says that government of the Republic of Lithuania recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legitimate government of China and Taiwan, as an integral part of China. And accordingly, the government of the Republic of Lithuania undertakes not to establish or encourage any official relations with Taiwan. However, this declaration does not preclude the reestablishment of diplomatic relations with the Republic of China, which has, air force, fleet, etc., etc. But it was not done. Is the establishment of Taiwanese, actually Taiwan's representative office in Lithuania. Many asked why Taiwanese and not Formosan, for example. Formosa is the old Portuguese name for the island of Taiwan. Why not with the Republic of China, but with Taiwan, a non-existent country, part of Chinese territory? What is that? Stupidity, incompetence, or a provocation to aggravate relations with the People's Republic of China and encroach on its sovereignty? Why does the EU and the US have one policy while the Lithuanian government has taken an advice step that violates international law and then asks for EU to help? The step by the Lithuanian government is a clear violation of the bilateral agreement between Lithuania and the People's Republic of China in 1991. And because this treaty states unequivocally that the government of the Republic of Lithuania undertakes not to establish or encourage any official relations with Taiwan. And with this non-existent, unrecognized, and not even independent state, quote unquote, Taiwan, Lithuania has declared that it has established official relations. James Richard Crawford concluded decades ago that Taiwan is not a state because the Republic of China has not declared the island as a separate state. Taiwan is an island that the Republic of China administers. We can ask the strategist in the Foreign Ministry of Lithuania whether Taiwan can recognize Lithuania de jure. No. Well, understand that no. Then with whom have they established official relations? So the legal argument, I think, is very important in this context. In this context is also very useful to remind the Constitution of the Republic of China itself, which does not mention Taiwan in any of its articles. In Chinese, there is only the Republic of China without Taiwan. Many forget the fact that the Republic of China, which sits in Taiwan, also claims Mongolia, Tibet, and territories in the South China Sea. At one time, the Republic of China even blocked Mongolia's admission to the UN. We can see right now, this move is also a clear misunderstanding of the internal dynamics between Kuomintang and DPP, betting on the later. So Lithuania, in a sense, ignored the internal dynamics of the politics in Taiwan, where we have basically two camps struggling. Moreover, the recent Lithuanian move clearly violates the principles of the Lisbon Treaty. EU has a purpose to encourage peace, its own values, and well-being of its member states. EU member states recognize multilateral relations based on the international law. EU does not make or escalate international tensions and conflicts. To wrap up my statement, I dare to ask a question: can you build a rule of law internationally? And can you build international relations built on the rule of law if you violate an international law and your own treaties? This is a dangerous precedent and bad example with implications for so many cases around. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And both of you were incredibly impressive. So this was 5 minutes and 10 seconds. So very much, both of you incredible debaters. I would like to give each of you the chance for a quick rebuttal to what the other side has been saying. So Reinhard, I would give you 30 seconds to 1 minute to respond to what Šarūnas has been saying, while our audience already asks, can kind of think about the questions that they would like to ask our speakers.
Well, I see at least two faults in the argument of Professor Liekis. Number one, the whole controversy and China's aggression against Lithuania did not start with the issue of the office. It started way before. The office came later, and it's been used as an excuse. China was told by the Lithuanian authorities that they were going to open an office, and China tried to impress upon Lithuania that they shouldn't do that, while other EU member states have had such offices for decades. So basically, China has tried to enforce an interpretation on the Taiwan policy of the EU that runs against the grain of what we've been pursuing for decades. We do agree with China that Taiwan is not to be recognized as a sovereign state, but we have always upheld that there will be cooperation with Taiwan authorities below that level, and we have always opposed the use of force to unite or reunite Taiwan with China. Lithuania has not gone against the grain of that European one China policy. It is also not to be ignored that what has been framed as a China-Lithuania controversy has moved far beyond. And you haven't addressed that, Professor Liekis. What China does now is to try to rupture the internal market. What China does now is to try to gain defining power over the EU's China policy. And I believe that the framing that you give the issue is far too narrow. And by the way, just as a little anecdote, the office through which the PRC pursues its policy towards Taiwan in Beijing is called the Taiwan Office. So if the Chinese call their office a Taiwan office, why couldn't the Lithuanians?
Thank you very much, Reinhard. And I would hand it over to Šarūnas Liekis to respond immediately. Okay, thank you very much for Reinhard for his remarks. I would like to stress that the story started a long time ago, 3-4 years ago, when there were plans established to open the office of Taipei office in Vilnius in Lithuania. So this was done in coordination with the People's Republic of China embassy in Vilnius as well. So they knew the process, how the process is going. However, the Lithuanian policy started abruptly to change when Lithuania left 17+1 format. And this relations, mutual accusations, basically made the relations left the relations on the bottom, possible bottom. And after that, this Lithuanian move with the name of Taiwan basically was the kind of apogee, you can say, of the conflict, which erupted. But when we speak about the formal arguments, Chinese have the formal arguments, because if any of EU countries start, for example, encroaching on the territorial integrity and sovereignty of other countries. For example, we have no, okay, like, I don't know, on take anything in Africa somewhere, you know. So are we gonna condone any stupid behavior and provocative behavior of a new country just because it's democratic? Democratic regimes make a lot of stupidities as well, as we know very well. So this is not the reason, you know, to condone erratic and irrational behavior of particular state, especially because this Taipei office was planned long in advance, and the Chinese People's Republic of China knew about it. But the condition, I mean, I quoted the agreement, bilateral agreement. You have to agree that this agreement was violated. I mean, unless, you know, we speak different languages. I mean, we speak different languages a little bit, but, you know, but so Reinhard, I think you have to take this argument that Lithuania violated bilateral agreement with China, and it created cause belli for China. Any country would react to violation or claims on its territorial integrity and sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think there was a couple of really important issues raised here, including the question of that you raised earlier, the question of why has Lithuania taken a step that no one else has taken so far, neither the US nor Germany nor others that have representation offices. I would like to bring someone into the debate who has a very direct position to this, and that is Diana Mikevitiene, who is the ambassador sort of in exile that has been kind of a collateral damage of the decision, who had to move back and leave China. So Diana, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, Janka. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I can see all of you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. I think
okay.
That's just about what we get.
Great. Thank you so much, and thanks for organizing a most inspiring debate. Very interesting. I've listened very carefully to the two speakers, who are both very knowledgeable. Definitely, I know the Lithuanian speaker quite well. I have big respect for him. But of course, you are talking something, about something that I have lived through. So in a way, I was a little eager to come in and comment, because both speakers, in fact, invoked the context and the timeline that preceded the point where the world came to know about what happened between Lithuania and China. But definitely there is a long context, and I was quite happy to be part of that context. And yes, Professor Liekis is very correct in saying that there was this plan of having an office of Taiwan and Lithuania, even with the previous government, and probably it was because of pandemics that it was not realized then. And there is, as you know, a lot of support in Lithuanian society for closer relation with Taiwanese people, businesses, cultures, and so on. There was this petition of well-known people, 100 who is who in Lithuania, who have signed a petition about 2 years ago, calling on the government to, in fact, develop those closer relationships. And I think Mr. Liekis, the Professor Liekis, is one of the signatories. So we had this context. Also, we also had a context of some unacceptable actions by the PRC diplomats and embassy in staging a rather violent protest that happened 2.5 years in the capital of Lithuania. But what happened was, in fact, that we have been very transparent, that I can testimony that myself, we have been very transparent with the Chinese colleagues about our plans to host the Taiwanese office. And I mean, I'm not talking about names, I'm only talking about the office. And I have to say the Chinese side said very clearly that this was a mistake and we shouldn't be doing it. When I asked them myself in Beijing, when I asked the foreign ministry why we are only aiming at the same type of offices of Taiwan that exist in various capitals in Europe, so why you are not allowing us to do something that the others have been doing? And I have to quote the answer because I think it's hugely important. The answer from Beijing was that while the others committed mistakes, we would no longer be allowed to make the same mistake. So it's probably not about us violating China's red lines, but about China's red lines advancing and with alarming speed, I must say. So here, when we have a situation like this, which has actually spilled over beyond Lithuania-China context, I have to say that it's no longer bilateral situation. We see that, red lines are advancing, and that there is a watershed moment for us, for everybody. If a global economy will be run by the Chinese rules, probably we have to face a lot of problems. So was it the French trade minister who said a couple of years ago that it no longer matters what happened between China and Lithuania? What matters is how China deals with situation. And I have to say that while we may argue with many academic arguments whether we have violated our own commitments, which the government thinks it hasn't, but it's very clearly that China has violated at least several of international, agreements and practices in dealing with something which was considered a grievance on the Chinese side. So that's why I think it's important to
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for kind of clarifying this also from being very directly affected. I think this is really important to point out that this is not an abstract problem, but that it creates real life consequences also for the diplomats that are involved in these contexts. We have a number of questions that are being raised, and I would like to pose them to our two speakers as well, and taking kind of the ambassador's commentary as the background against which they will respond to them. The first question I would like to pose to you is the question of that is raised among one of the chat questions here, is what sort of business and trade relations should the EU be shaping with China in the context of continuous and growing China-US competition? And I would frame that a little bit bigger and would be saying, how should the relationship look like? Is this what we're seeing, something that will be something that will change the relationship between Europe and China fundamentally? Or is this something because it takes place in a bigger picture and it really doesn't have anything to do with Lithuania? Or how does it evolve? How will the kind of relationship, the business relationship, evolve as a consequence of what we are seeing? And I might throw this back first to Šarūnas Liekis and then to Reinhard Bütikofer.
Okay, so I think naturally that Lithuanian issues triggered all kinds of discussions on the economic front, especially because EU was seeing that as an entity, big international entity, a trading entity, that in a sense supply chains are many of them are located in in China. In times of crisis, EU starts to experience all kinds of difficulties, and naturally here we have EU-US relations, and both countries economically are much more integrated than EU, and the US is more integrated than EU and China. Speaking about trade, FDI, etc., etc. However, here I would also like to stress the differences, regional differences in EU itself. Most of West European countries are recipients of FDI from China, and vice versa. They import, they export capital into China. So, and when you look at East Central Europe, and here we're speaking about the Lithuania's problem in part as well, because all these East Central European countries basically are in disadvantage in this business deal. I mean, when you look at for example, even even not EU, but look at the US. Last year, US made FDI $123 billion into China, and and received from China 38 billion. So, and then these people are saying that, you cut your business relations with China because they are authoritarian, they this and that. I mean, it looks from the point of East Central Europeans, the whole game, Western Europe versus East Central Europe, a little bit unfair, because in a sense, they, achieved probably apogeum, the height, high point in their trade relations, profit bringing home, from China, basically. And all these Central Europeans, when you look at the statistics, they are at disadvantage. And then plus we get some kind of characters who, in Lithuanian political scenery, who basically destroy whatever was this big difficulty during the last 7-8 years achieved in bilateral relations with People's Republic of China.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Reinhard?
Well, I would take issue with the framing of the question. Certainly, there is a competition between the US and China, between a weakening hegemon, you might say, and an aspiring global hegemon. But that's not the only reality. There is also a second dimension to the relationship in which we are not neutral onlookers, and that's the competition between the camp of democracy and the camp of authoritarianism. I believe that the decoupling strategy that the Trump administration advocated in its day never was a positive perspective for Europe. And I don't know of many Europeans who've ever bought into that. On the other hand, the reality is that while Trump talked a lot about decoupling and the US business did not follow suit, the Chinese government is enforcing decoupling on terms that it found positive from their own angle. We should not go for decoupling, I repeat that, but we should protect against dependencies that could be used for blackmailing. The assumption that the more we invest in China, the more we trade with China, the better, that assumption has bumped into the reality of a new Chinese nationalism in economic strategy. China will geopolitically motivated weaponize trade and investment if they see fit. And we have to defend against that. So there is a need for the European Union to protect against unfair trading and investment practices from the Chinese side. We've been building our defenses over the last couple of years, 5 years or so, starting with anti-dumping, now looking into anti-coercion instrument, or more reciprocity in the procurement sector, or against unfair subsidizing practices in China. We would, of course, want to deal with China on the basis of WTO rules, but China has been flouting these rules from the very first day they joined the WTO, and they are increasingly doing that. So there is the need to be cautious and to make sure that we are not going to fall victim to blackmail. And many businesses have already developed strategies that can be described as China +1 or China +2 to have additional sourcing so that they will not fall victim.
Thank you. There's many more questions, so I would like to take two together. One of them is really short and is actually one that you can answer with one word. So the question raised by Sören Kose was, if we reduce the matter to a legal question of which government represents China, then maybe we should ask ourselves the exact question again. Do we prefer a democratic government or an authoritarian to represent it? A slightly more provocative take on the issue. And then a comment and two questions by Gregor Steck from Merix. So first of all, thanking both speakers for their remarks, and then to both of you, how do you expect the situation to be resolved? I think that's a really important question. Where do we go from here? And saying that neither the EU or Lithuania nor China seems to have sort of an easy way or a map for de-escalating. What do you see as the end game that could come out of this? We'll start again maybe with Šarūnas Liekis and then Reinhard Bütikofer.
I think this remark, democratic, not democratic, it's like, I think we have in the world more kind of semi-authoritarian, not fulfill democracies, etc., all around the world. I mean, we have like, you know, in the framework of NATO partner, like, you know, famous Erdogan, you know, with Turkey. I mean, who for sure not a big Democrat, you know, with 50,000, you know, prisoners of consciousness and political prisoners. Then, you know, we have Aliyev, you know, Azerbaijan, and you name it, you know, all around, Saudi Arabia, you know, all Egypt. US is constantly, you know, feeding, you know, Egyptian military. This year, 1 billion or 300 million. So, you know, we cannot separate, you know, according to the system, you know, the whole world international system. I mean, we cannot make a secluded, you know, club of democracies, which are at war with non-democracies. So, you know, so it's even in many international organizations, this is impossible to do. We have some tendencies in EU, you know, we have, you know, Hungary, for example, you know, you can name it. I mean, it's like these situations are changing, you know, constantly. So the principle of international relations is not based on the system, it's based on the statehood. So it's based on international law principles, which we observe. So it's in a sense, and then in what situation you put businesses? Businesses suddenly, you know, for example, they can work 20 years and then suddenly you say that this is a kind of dangerous investment you were in. And then, you know, you should go out. What happened with the Lithuanian Chinese investment, like in a few days, you should get out of the country, you know. So this is, we don't want to repeat the situation of the 30s and the 20s, you know, in Europe. So this is kind of short, you know, remark on this democracy point. Probably, and then I pass, you know, the floor to Reinhard, you know, to continue.
But for the end game, you leave it to Reinhard.
No.
Also a word on that, where do you see Lithuanian opportunities to de-escalate? Where do you think, you know, what would be the next?
I mean, there are clearly opportunities to de-escalate by changing simply the name, changing to Taipei, I think, and the situation would be de-escalated. However, the issue is among, I think, is the present Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as the present government in Lithuania, and which is basically sees it as a kind of kneeling in front of the Chinese Communist Party. And this point, I think, is a wrong one, because in a sense, clearly with this title, they violated international law. Lithuanian side violated. And we're not talking, I mean, who is right, who is not right, probably. We are talking about who gave the cause, you know, for other side, you know, to attack. So Lithuanian side gave a cause for the Chinese to attack, basically, and also to attack EU as a result, you know. So I think changing name would be a very good and healthy compromise.
Do you think that it will be enough for the Chinese side?
For a while, yes, for a while. And then if not enough, then we can have another discussion. We'll see.
Reinhard, what do you think?
Well, regarding my preference, that's obvious. I would, of course, prefer a democracy. But in the real world that we have to deal with, it is only the PRC that represents China, full stop. However, recognition of the PRC does not include support for their claim to the right of using military force to conquer Taiwan. We should not only show sympathy, but also show solidarity in the defense of the democracy of this self-governing island, even if we don't recognize it as a sovereign nation, as we don't. As regards the end game, Professor Liekis has advocated a non-realistic option. Changing the name would not change anything. And the Chinese have said so. They have said so publicly for everybody to read, even in English. They have listed a number of claims and demands on Lithuania that Lithuania could only fulfill if it decided to become a Chinese vassal. Everybody who believes that changing the name would be solving the issue is ignoring the fact that the name has not been the beginning of the problem and is not the core of the problem. The issue started when China demanded that Lithuania forgo the option that other EU member states have taken advantage of having relations with Taiwan. And it has moved beyond that by far. So to focus this on the name issue is an attraction that falls into China's trap. Lithuania will remain in the dock for a while, and it can well live with that because its direct economic dependency on China is very, very limited. But what we should fight for, and I'm again happy to be able to mention that Macron raised this in his telephone call with Xi, we should fight the European spillover that China has ventured into. And I think that's a realistic option.
I would like to hand it back to Šarūnas Liekis for a quick comment, because I think he wanted to say something immediately to this. But before we do that, just really quickly, and you're saying Lithuania can live with that. Can it also live with the secondary consequences of European businesses leaving Lithuania? And is there anything we can do about that?
Well,
Janka,
that's exactly what I had in mind when I talked about the European spillover.
Yeah,
Lithuania cannot live with that, and we cannot live with that. And that's something we have to fight hard over.
Šarūnas Liekis.
About the name, first about the name and the spillover. The name, 2 days ago, there was an interview by Chinese representative in Vilnius who said that this is enough. I mean, the changing of the name. Plus, this is a position of the President's Office of Lithuania. This is not a position of the government, but the president who is responsible for the foreign policy, and the government is not following the suit of the President's Office. This is another problem. Because of the political, this is about internal Lithuanian politics. This is not about that only. So the name is, I think, at this stage is crucial. Regarding the spillovers, the business from Lithuania leading to other EU countries. So I don't know if anybody can manage this situation, because everybody still, I mean, you know, in EU we have nation states. Everybody is selfish. So businesses are moving, and if I can quote you, you know, one of big, you know, the representative of big EU and German actually company in China, where they have 85% of business in People's Republic and 15% in the island of Taiwan. Okay, so their position was very clear. They said, if there is a challenge to our business in People's Republic of China, we will cut off everything in Taiwan. No question. And this is very big and very well-known German company. I spoke with the head of this company. I don't want to mention the name. He said, no question about that. I mean, those politicians who try to claim and ask us to do something different, they are unrealistic.
I know that Reinhard Bütikofer wants to answer immediately as well, and then I'll bring in one last question, and we are having an actual debate here, which is good. Reinhard Bütikofer, please.
Well, I would argue that we should not rely on the testimony of the Lithuanian president, because he is a flip-flopper on the issue. He came out against the name after he had been in favor before. We should take more seriously the official stance of China, who have argued that they will not be content with the change of the name, just as they had not been willing to allow Lithuania to open a Taiwan office, whatever the name would be at all. And they have criticized Lithuania over Lithuania leaving the 17+1, as if a nation in Europe would only be sovereign as long as they entered into a certain relationship with China. And after they had entered the relationship, they would need China's willingness to allow them to deviate again. That is what is at stake. It's about sovereignty. It's not about a name. Please.
I think this is fantastic, and I think we should discuss for another 45 minutes, but I want to give our participants also the chance to come in. So I would have two more items that I think would like to bring into this discussion and make it even more fiery. One is the WTO, that has now been sought out by the EU as the place where an official complaint is being launched, is that the right place for this? Or is it actually because it's not fully operational, not fully functional, and in question in total, is that kind of something that is not going to work and this is just a symbolic gesture? And the other question that I think is really important, because we're discussing solidarity here as well, among the others, should Lithuania have discussed this, its moves beforehand with the Europeans in a much more consequential way or much more in depth? Should Europe have been better prepared? Because I think I'm not telling any secrets if I say that initially there was an irritation on the European side as well with these moves being taken, particularly in Brussels. I'll give the floor first to Reinhard Bütikofer this time and then to Šarūnas Liekis.
The WTO is indeed the right place to go because as trade multilateralists, we should insist on solving these issues according to the rules of the WTO. And some have argued that because there is no appellate body at the time, that might be a claim into the void, which is not true, because China has made an agreement with the EU regarding the procedure, how to deal with such a trade conflict in the absence of an appellate body. So it could indeed be resolved through the rules that exist. And I think it's a good approach from the European Union, even though it's not going to move very fast. The second question, obviously, if you're dealing with a dragon, you better bring your friends along. That is a lesson that all of us have to learn. I mean, unilateralism in China relations is probably not the right solution. On the other hand, there is a quote from the scriptures saying, those that have not failed should throw the first stone. And I'm pretty sure that all those that want to criticize Lithuania for going it alone will find enough reason to be self-critical in their own about their own unilateralism. So I think we should all come together and forge a united European China strategy.
That was almost like a final statement, but we will have the opportunity for that as well. Šarūnas Liekis, for you, the question of WTO the right place, and should the Lithuanian government have consulted first with European friends and partners?
I think naturally they should have consulted. They even didn't consult inside of the country. This was unilateral done by the group of 3 people. I mean, the 3 friends. I mean, to be open. I mean, 3 politicians, basically, we can name. We know. Okay, so, well, the trade organization, probably it's a way to go, but also you have to remember that on the ground, the situation is much more complex. Recently, for example, there was a tender on Rail Baltic, or Rail Baltia, okay, so about the bridge construction for 65 million. And the Lithuanian government dropped out the first winner of the tender, which was Spanish company, actually owned by the Chinese. So they dropped this just because of the origin of the country. So this is kind of other developments we have where Chinese businesses are being discriminated as well. I mean, the owners, I mean, without any proof of anything, they are dropped out. And then they appointed the second winner, which is actually owned by Gazprom, by the Russians, but the Italian firm. So, you know, we have these kind of developments, which are, it's not a clear cut for World Trade Organization. I mean, we have, violations of the international trade regime, I think, on both sides, on everybody's violated. And the question is who has better lawyers and, who pushes the case, further in this direction. However, here I think we have to think we are losing, I think, from the side also internal developments in the Republic of China, the relationships between DPP and Kuomintang. When Kuomintang comes back to power in 24, Lithuania will lose all advantages because Lithuania was threatening territorial integrity of China. I think the very Taiwanese will turn against Lithuania. So we have to keep in mind all these developments and why it happened, not only about these three friends, but this particular situation of DPP being in power, Biden being in power, in Democrats winning the elections. So it's a constellation of many developments together.
Thank you very much. And I think it is very helpful to contextualize and to kind of get also the domestic politics of this, because I think if we've realized one thing over the last 2 to 3 years in China policy in Europe, that it has increasingly become not a foreign policy topic anymore, but is seeping into the kind of domestic policy struggles all across the EU. And this is, again, I think, another sign of us kind of going to face this again in other circumstances. We are at 10 minutes out of 12 o'clock. And as I said in the beginning, a German running this means a German is going to finish this on time as well. Also, we don't want to steal more of your precious time here, particularly for our speakers. So it's time for your final 2 minutes, sharpening your argument again, making your final case before we then cast the vote again and see whether Professor Šarūnas Liekis was able to convince more of the 10% into his camp, or whether Reinhard Bütikofer has extended his vast lead even further and won over the 5% that weren't decided yet. We will go in the reverse order for the final statements. So Professor Šarūnas Liekis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think that this debate well demonstrated that we have to be very careful in international relations. We have to not go against sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the countries. Also, it demonstrated that any move by any member of the EU has huge implications for the others as well, and then they have to cope with the serious issues and the consequences of the very often unintended provocation, which might be the case of the opening of the Taiwanese office in Vilnius. But this is a kind of caution with which we should approach external world and, in a sense, show solidarity with each other, but at the same time to try to correct the wrong behavior of the member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Reinhard Bütikofer.
2 arguments. First, we should not confuse black and white. Not China's sovereignty is at stake, but Lithuania's sovereignty. Second, whoever believes that there might be an option of staying neutral on the sidelines is mistaken. And this is not just for the reason of solidarity, but also because we have to pursue an enlightened self-interest. A Roman poet by the name of Quintus Horatius Flaccus, known as Horace, once wrote, "If your neighbor's house is on fire, it's your concern. Tua res agitur." That's the argument.
Thank you very much, both of you, for making your case so very clear and precise also in the very end of this. I would like to now have Marlene, our technical host, pull up there you go, it's already there. She's on the job here. So should Lithuania expect more solidarity vis-à-vis China? Do you agree or do you disagree? Or are you more confused now than you were in the beginning, which is probably also a potential outcome that we have to be ready for? Please cast your votes. We need about 30 seconds to a minute or so to be able to kind of have the results in, and I will have them in here shortly. I do think that what I take away from this already is that the conversations that we're going to be having in Europe about this topic are going to be very fierce in the future. There's going to be a lot of debates about history, about legal arguments. There's going to be a lot of debates about what it means to be a democratic bloc and how we deal with our own internal problems and hypocrisies that we entertain. I do think that we're going to have a lot of debates about the fact that the Europeans are not entirely consistent always in their policies as well. And these consistencies or inconsistencies are going to be put up to the table even more. And I think we can, in this context, see that China is kind of holding a mirror in front of us. And we have to also decide how we want to face up to that in the future. Marlene, I can ask you now, do we have results coming in for, I feel like a TV host here, this is fantastic. The initial
Eurovision host.
Eurovision, a bit like that, exactly. So the initial poll we had was 85% agreed that we should show more European solidarity with Lithuania vis-a-vis China. That was the initial poll that we had, and the outcome poll is exactly the same. So we have 85% saying still China should expect more solidarity vis-a-vis Europe. Lithuania should expect more solidarity from Europe vis-a-vis China. 10% that disagree with this, and 5% still don't know. Now, we don't know whether there were any moves within the groups, and so that some people have changed. These numbers don't give us any qualitative assessment of what we're looking at. But I do think what they show is that we might have relatively clear-cut views in our heads already about how we perceive this and how we see the situation. The clear victory in the sense of the debate goes, I would say, to Reinhard Bütikofer here, although if there is no movement in the votes at all, then he could say he played really good defense on his massive lead, and Šarūnas Liekis was not able to field a massive attack on his in his position. I thank you both for entertaining this conversation with us, for engaging into an actual debate between the two of you, exchanging arguments in a kind of really fierce manner that was really good and engaging. And I think everyone who has been listening has taken away a lot from this and is able to kind of rewatch and relook at your arguments and kind of check where we are in the conversation. I would like to thank both of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. I would like to thank all of our participants here for sending questions, for being part of the conversation, and for giving us the attention here. I'd like to thank the ECFR team, Pavel Zerka and Marlene Riedel, who are in the background here and not visible, but have been instrumental in organizing this debate and making everything possible. And I would also like to thank, again, Stiftung Mercator for their fantastic support in this project, in the Reshape project that we're doing together. I think this is amazing that we are able to host these conversations. We do hope that we can welcome you in person at some point again in the near future. And with this, I would like to thank Professor Šarūnas Liekis, thank Reinhard Bütikofer, and wish them both a wonderful day, and thank all of you, and see you hopefully soon. On behalf of ECFR, it's a wrap, and we wish you a great day.